The bottom of Kuf Nun Amud Beis, Klal Oma Abishol Kol Sha'ani V'chulo. So before we see this part of the Gemara, you have to remind yourself of what it said in the Mishnah on Kuf Nun Amud Aleph. Kuf Nun Amud Aleph, it was speaking about whether a person is allowed to wait on Shabbos for dark and go to the end by the Tchum to wait there to be able to go and do something Matzah Shabbos. Machshichen ala Tchum. The Tana Kama in the Mishnah said that it depends. If you're waiting there for something which is not allowed to be done on Shabbos, which is lisker loy poyalim, so then you're not allowed to wait there for that purpose. But if you're going there to wait, to go be able to go out of the Tchum to guard your fruits, which is allowed to be done on Shabbos, so for that you're allowed. Then Abishol comes and gives a klal. So Abishol, Omar Abishol, Kol Shani Zakai B'Amirosoi, Kol Shani Zakai B'Amirosoi Rashoyani Lahachshech Olav. If it's something that I'm allowed to tell somebody else to do, then since I'm allowed to tell him to do it, I'm also allowed to go there physically to stand there by the end of the Tchum Shabbos. So the Gemara's assumption right now is Abishol is not coming to argue with the Tana Kama. All Abishol is coming to do is he's taking what the Tana Kama said and he's giving you the klal, so you should have the understanding of how to apply what the Tana Kama said. So if that's the case, the Gemara is going to have a question regarding which case exactly does Abishol's klal apply. To the first case of the Tana Kama, where the Tana Kama is saying the chumrah, that you shouldn't go there if it's something that it's asur to do, or is his klal referring to the second case of the Tana Kama, that you could go there if it's something that is allowed to be done on Shabbos? Fragt the Gemara, iboyeluhu, or someone not geiris iboyeluhu, Abishol ahai. On which case is Abishol's klal referring to? Ilema Reisha, is Abishol's klal coming to clarify the beginning of what the Tana Kama said? Reisha koi, you're not allowed to go and stand by the tchum for the purpose that Matzah Shabbos you're going to bring fruits which are forbidden. If that's what he's referring to, so why does Abishol use a klal which is explaining the heter? You should have used a klal that's explaining the isser. So hi, kol shani zakai b'amirosai, rashoyani b'chashichasai. Why is he saying that if it's something that I'm allowed to do on Shabbos, I'm allowed to tell somebody to do it on Shabbos, I'm allowed to go and stand there for the dark, he should have been focusing on the isser. Kol she'eni zakai b'amirosai. If I'm not allowed to go and tell someone to do this on Shabbos, eini rashoy b'chashichasai. I'm not allowed to go and stand there. Mi boyale. This is what he should have said. If he's referring to the Reisha of the Tana Kama, the Reisha of the Tana Kama is speaking about the Isser. And he's coming to say the klal that pertains to that Isser. Ela Seifem. Ela, ma, you're going to say, Abishol is referring to the second part of what the Tana Kama said. The second part of the Tana Kama, what did he say? He was telling you the Isser, he was telling you the heter, that in a case where, again, what was the second part of the Tana Kama? That if it's machshechu lishmer umevi peiris b'yoda, you're allowed to go and stand there for the purpose to guard the fruits, since that's something that's allowed to be done on Shabbos. So, if that's the case, what did the Tana, before I read the Gemara inside, what did the Tana Kama say b'feirish? The Tana Kama was talking about being machshech, going there, standing there by the end of Shabbos. Did the Tana Kama ever speak about what you're allowed to do on Shabbos, what you're allowed to tell somebody to do on Shabbos or not? No, Tana Kama never spoke about that. So if Abishol wants to give you a klal, what should Abishol be saying? Abishol should be saying this that the Tana Kama just said, that I'm allowed to go and stand there. If you're allowed to go and stand there, you're also allowed to go and speak about that on Shabbos. Usually, if there's something that it's saying befeidish in the Mishnah, so then you take that statement that says befeidish in the Mishnah and you toila and you connect to that statement that you befeidish said to something else that was not befeidish said. Let's see in the Gemara inside. Ela seifa koi. Elamai, the words of Abishol are going on the seifa. What should have he said? Aval machshechu lishmeir umevi peiris b'yodoi. So the Tana Kama said that you can stand there for the purpose of guarding the fruits, and then you can even bring those fruits in. Hi, kol shani zakai b'chashechosai. Rashoy ani b'amirosai mi boyalei. So in continuation of what the Tana Kama is speaking about, he should have said, the Tana Kama is saying that you could stand there b'chashecha. So since you could stand there b'chashecha, you could even speak about it in Shabbos itself. That's what Abishol should have said. Rashi here brings the expression that the Gemara uses in a lot of places, that toli tanya b'deloi tanya. The Gemara will never be toile something which says befedish in something that the Tana doesn't even mention b'chlal. That's what it seems like Abba Shaul is doing here. Abba Shaul is being toile a din that the Tana Kama said befedish in something. Sorry. In something, he's being toile something that the Tana said befedish in something that the Tana didn't even speak about. You should have spoken the other way around. You should have said, this that you said you're allowed to stand there, that's also true that you're allowed to speak about this to anybody on Shabbos. So the Gemara answers and explains the Pshat and Abba Shaul is different. La'olam aseife koi. Really, the words of Abba Shaul is going on the seife of the Tanakama, which is the heter. But, as the Gemara will now explain, according to Rashi, Abba Shaul is really arguing on the Tanakama. He's not stam coming to give a klal and explain what the Tanakama said. He's coming to argue on the Tanakama. Abba Shaul, ahai aha koi. Abba Shaul, what he's saying is based on the following statement. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Mutter la'adam lo'imel chaveiroi, on Shabbos, you're allowed to tell your friend, Shmoir li peiris shebetchumach. Please guard for me my peiris that are in your Tchum Shabbos. I can't be there, but you could. You guard me the peiris in your Tchum Shabbos. And vani eshmolacha peiris shebetchumi. And I will guard for you the peiris that are in my Tchum. Okay? So they're allowed to, each person is allowed to tell the other person to do on Shabbos what he can't do himself, what the other person is doing it, and for him it's allowed. So you're allowed to tell another person to do this on Shabbos. So what's the Gemara saying? This statement of Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel is the basis of what Abba Shaul was saying. Abba Shaul is telling the Tanakama, you also agree to this statement of Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, that on Shabbos you're allowed to guard fruits. On Shabbos you're allowed to tell your friend to go and guard fruits for you. The Ka'amar, so now based on this statement, the Ka'amar Abba Shaul at Tanakama, the Abba Shaul is telling the Tanakama, Milay Maidis, are you not maided to this as well? The mutter Adam Leimel Chaveirei, Shmoirli Peiris Shebetchumach, that you should guard the fruits in your Tchum Shabbos. V'ani Yashmalach Peiris Shebetchumi, and I'm going to guard the Peiris in my Tchum Shabbos. You made it to this, right? So if so, he's arguing on the Tanakama and he's telling the Tanakama, Ve'eime, so why wouldn't you want to say, Kol Shani Zakai B'amirasai, anything, in any case, that it's something that's allowed to be spoken about, that you're allowed to speak about this on Shabbos, Rashay Ani Lahach Shechalov. These are things that you also are yourself allowed to go there and stand there and wait there by the end of Shabbos for the evening. That's what Abba Shaul is coming to tell the Tanakama. So now, what's the significance of what Abba Shaul is saying? What would you gain? What's the difference if you say it in this oifen? What's the difference from the way the Tanakama said it? So Rashi explains, the Tanakama holds only when it comes to guarding fruits. The Tanakama gave one example. If you're going for guarding fruits, for that you're allowed to go and stand there by night, for the Tchum Shabbos, to be able to go out for guarding fruits. Comes Abba Shaul and tells the Tanakama, why are you speaking only about guarding fruits? Why didn't you say something much more inclusive? Anything that you're allowed to speak about on Shabbos to someone else, you're allowed to go yourself there to the Tchum as well. That's much more. What does that include? So as Rashi says, and we'll see in the Hemshech of the Gemara, that includes a whole list of things that the Gemara mentioned on the bottom of Kufnun and Amar Aleph, all the things that you speak about that are related to mitzvahs, all the things that you speak about that are related to tzarchei rabim, iskei rabim, all of those things are not considered to be mimtzai cheftzecha. You're only not allowed to speak on Shabbos about your own personal affairs and business affairs if it's Mimtzei Chefzecha. If it's Cheftzei Shamayim, you're allowed. So what Abba Shaul is telling the Tanakama, why are you only giving an example of guarding the fruits? Anything that I'm allowed to speak about to somebody on Shabbos, because it's not part of Mimtzei Chefzecha, I should be allowed to go there and stand by the Tchum Shabbos to be able to go and get it done right away. And the Gemara before brought an example, and the Gemara now is going to bring the example as well, to go and stand there to take care of the asek for a kala or for a mace. For that you're also allowed to stand there. Now the Tanakama disagrees with this. The Tanakama holds, no. Enechanami, we did say before, you're allowed to speak about Cheftzei Shamayim on Shabbos, but that's only speaking. To physically go to the Tchum Shabbos, to be there at the time of Matzah Shabbos, to be able to take care of those Cheftzei Shamayim, that you're not allowed. Mashenken Abba Shaul is adding and saying that no, not only are you allowed to speak about them on Shabbos, but you're also yourself allowed to go there to the Tchum Shabbos to be ready to do them right by Matzah Shabbos. That's the argument of Abba Shaul on the Tanakama. The Gemara here brings now a braisa that you can see this clearly. So when Abba Shaul says Klal la'asuye mais. Abba Shaul here is giving us a klal. What is this klal coming to include? And he includes more than what the Tanna Kama said. La'asuye hada tanarabana. It includes this that we see in the Braisa. Braisa says, Ein machshichen al atchum. You're not allowed to go and stand by the tchum for a night. Lahavi behemoth. To go and bring back in a behemoth Motzei Shabbos that went out of the tchum. Why not? Because a behemoth, we're talking here about a behemoth that you would have to carry back in. On Shabbos, it's something you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to carry a behemoth on Shabbos because a behemoth is muktzah. We learned about this once before. You're allowed to help a behemoth walk. You're allowed to maybe sometimes push a behemoth to go, but not to carry a behemoth. So you're not allowed to do this on Shabbos. So you're not allowed to stand there to be there for Motzei Shabbos. If you're walking with your behemoth and your behemoth strolled out of the tchum, and now you want to bring it back in, you can call to it and it would come back by itself. So that's, you're not touching it, you're not doing any muktzah. That's allowed. This is the first half of the Braisa. Then the Braisa says, Klal Oma Abba Shaul, Kol Shani Zake B'Amidosaid, Abba Shaul's Klal, anything that I'm allowed to speak about on Shabbos, Rashoy Ani Lahachshecholov, I'm also physically allowed to go to the Tchum Shabbos and wait there for Motzei Shabbos. And then he says, what does this klal come to include? Umachshichen, you're allowed to go there, lefakeach al iske kalev al iske ameis, to go and be ready for Motzei Shabbos, to take care of the matters for a kala or for a mace, lahavi loy oren v'tachrichem, to bring him his oren and tachrichem. V'oimrim loy, and you can tell your friend on Shabbos, leich l'makom ploini, go to this place to take care of this. And if you don't find what you need in that place, go and bring from another place. If you didn't find to be able to buy, well, in this case we're talking about aron and tachrichim, or the needs of a kala. If you don't find for the price of a money, so have a b'masayim, pay masayim. So these are all things that are tzarchei mitzvah. It's cheftzei shemayim. You're allowed to speak about them on Shabbos. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says, you're allowed to speak about all tzarchei mitzvah on Shabbos, but you're not allowed to mention the price that he says over here, money, masayim, the price of the money that it costs, that you're not allowed to mention. This is the way it's passed in the Shulchan Aruch, that on Shabbos you're allowed to speak about any cheftzei shemayim, but you shouldn't mention the price. So we see clearly here in this Braisa that when Abba Shaul was giving this klal, what was Abba Shaul's chiddush? The Tanna Kama held that only b'negeh to pay this, where it's completely mutter on Shabbos, that you're allowed to speak about on Shabbos, and you're also allowed to go to the tchum to be there for Motzei Shabbos. B'negeh to cheftzei shemayim, though, there was the heter to speak about it on Shabbos, but you're not allowed to physically go there to be there for Motzei Shabbos. Abba Shaul is arguing and adding, not only are you allowed to speak about them on Shabbos, you're also allowed to yourself go there physically to the tchum to be able to be there ready for Motzei Shabbos. That's the pshat in our Mishnah here.
When they sell aliyas, it's cheftzei shemayim, but they specify.
Correct. It's considered to be so. Some people don't. Some people have a meaning not to. But the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch speaks about it, and he says that it's allowed. You're allowed to mention even the price when you get to the aliyas. Zok to Mishnah.
What does Abba Shaul hold about lahavi behema?
Not allowed. It's muktzah. That's something which is completely asa. Everybody agrees if it's something that's completely asa to be done on Shabbos, you're not allowed to wait there for Motzei Shabbos to do it. Zok the Mishnah. So now here's the Mishnah where it brings this halacha b'negeh to the chassan and the kala, or the kala and the iskei ameis, that you're allowed to be there ready for Motzei Shabbos. And this, according to Rashi's pshat in our Gemara, this Mishnah is only according to Abba Shaul. It's a hemshech of Abba Shaul's opinion and not according to the Tanna Kama. Machshichen al tchum, you're allowed to go and wait there for Motzei Shabbos by the tchum, lefakeach al iske kala, to take care of the needs of a kala, val iske ameis, and to take care of the needs of a mace, lahavi loy aron v'tachrichim, to bring him the aron and tachrichim. Nachri shehevi chalilim b'Shabbos, a guy that brings a flute in Shabbos. Amal, they used to use flutes by a levaya. It was one of the ways that they would eulogize and mourn the dead. So if this flute was brought in Shabbos, lo yisped behen. Because it was brought in Shabbos, with Chilul Shabbos, it was brought out of the Tchum, you're not allowed to use it on Shabbos. According to Rashi, you're not allowed to use it forever. Rashi says, La'olam. Taisvis argues on Rashi. Taisvis says that you're not allowed to use it. You're allowed to use it, but you have to wait b'chdei sheyasu. The usual shear, you have to wait as long as it would take to bring it. Weiter, another din, again, middle of the, again, lo yisvud ben Yisrael, elam came bo mimakim karev. So you can't use this flute unless it came from a place that's near enough that it didn't go from out of the Tchum Shabbos. If it did, like I said, so you're not allowed to use it. Also, like aron v'chafru like kaver, if goyim made an aron, or they dug a kaver, so you cover by Yisrael. A yid could be buried in it. Okay, so we're talking about a case that the guy made it for the purpose of another guy, or he made it stam to sell for anybody. He didn't make it specifically for this yid. V'im b'shvil Yisrael, but if he made the aron or dug the kaver specifically for a yid, then lo yikava by a lamas. Then a yid should not be buried in it forever. Okay, so now the first thing the Gemara will clarify is the negeh to the case that we said that only if the flute was brought mimakim karayv, so then you're allowed to use it on Shabbos. How do we define that it was brought mimakim karayv? How do we know? How do we define this? My mimakim karayv. Rav Omar, so Rav says mimakim karayv mamish. Makim karayv means karayv mamish, meaning Rashi explains the pshat of karayv mamish means that you have to know for certain that it was brought mimakim karev. You know exactly where he brought this flute from. This is a flute he had in his house, and you know exactly for sure that he brought it mimakim karev. Only then is it allowed to be used. But if you have any suffix about this, you're not sure where he brought it from, you're not allowed to use it. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Chayshinon shema chutz l'chaim elanu. No, Shmuel says a heter. Shmuel is mekel. Shmuel says, no, even if you don't know for sure that it was brought mimakim karev, it's possible that even if it was brought from outside the city, it was brought from right outside the wall, and it was not outside the Tchum Shabbos, and you could use it. This is a very unusual thing, as Rashi points out. The Gemara uses the term chayshinon as a kula. Usually in Shas, the word chayshinon is a chumrah. This is one of the few cases, Rashi brings another example from the Gemara in Chagige, that the word chayshinon means a kula. That in this case, we're chayshish to be mekel, that maybe you don't have to know for sure that it was brought from a close place, as long as you don't know for sure that it was brought from a far place, even if it's a suffix, that could be considered to be that it was brought mimakim karev. You could be mekel, like usually every gzeirim that Rabbana were mekel, and you could say that it could be used on Shabbos. Sagt the Gemara, Deikem as Nissen kavasei the Shmuel, the Mishnah, the words of the Mishnah is meduyik. It seems like Shmuel. Ketani, it says in the Mishnah, Asalei aron v'chafalei kever. A guy made an aron or he dug a kever. You cover by Yisrael. A yid could be buried in it. So it said in the Mishnah stam. In other words, the guy, we don't know what the guy made this kever or this aron for. Alma misfeike shari. So we see that if a guy is digging a cave, not specifically for the yid, but stam, a yid could use it. So hachanami misveike shari. Therefore, Shmuel says the same is also true with the flute that was brought. If it's a case that it's a suffix, it's also allowed. That's in the pshat of our Mishnah. We see a raya to Shmuel. Tanya kavase de Rav. There's another case where you see a case of a suffix, and we're going to be machmer like Rav. What is this case? We had this before. A city where you have Yidden and Goyim living in it, and you have a bathhouse that's being used on Shabbos. So now this bathhouse was heated up on Shabbos. But for who? For whose purpose was it heated up on Shabbos? We learned already before in Gemara, anything that was done for the purpose of a Yid, so you're not allowed to use that. If it was done for the purpose of a guy, you can use it right away in Matzah Shabbos. So Imroiv Nachrim, if this is a city that's mostly Goyim, Le'erev Rechetz B'miyad, Matzah Shabbos, you can go and use this bathhouse immediately because it was heated up for the purpose of Goyim, not for the purpose of Yidden. Imroiv Yisrael, if it's a city that's mostly Yidden, Yamten Ad Kadesh Yechamu Chamen. So then you have to wait Matzah Shabbos, Kadesh Yasu, how long it would take to heat it up, because it was heated up for the purpose of most people, which are Yidden. Mechza al Mechza. If the city is half and half, so then it's also asa v'yamten at kadesh yechamu. You also have to wait until it takes to heat it up. So what do you see over here? A case of mechza al mechza. So the person that heated up this bathhouse, you don't know who heated it up for it. So it's a suffix. And the Braisa says you have to be machmer to wait. So Rav holds the same applies with the Chalil. That this flute that was brought and you don't know who it was brought for, you're not sure, it's not you don't know who it was brought for, you don't know how far it came from. Did it come from a mokim karev or mokim rachek? You have to be machmer. That's what you see over here. Rabbi Yehuda argues though, Rabbi Yehuda bambati ketana. He gives an example of another case of a suffix, and he says you can be mekel. What's this example of a suffix? You have a small pool. So it's one small pool. Im yeshpa rashus, if there's a government official, if there's a prominent person, he could use this bath right away, Matzah Shabbos. So the Gemara explains what this means. My Rashus, what does it mean, Rashus? An important individual. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Yitzchak, Berei de Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav Yitzchak, which was his own son, that's what it seems like the Pshat is. Rav Yehuda is repeating something in the name of his own son. Im Yeshpa Adam Choshev. If you have a prominent person, sheyesh le asara avodim, and he has 10 servants, shemacham lo yud kumkimen bevasachas, and they all are serving him, and they're heating up 10 chayniks of hot water, and all at the same time, ba'ambati ketana, and it's a small bath, it's a small pool. Mutter lichas by miyad, so then you're allowed to heat it up right away, because right Matzah Shabbos, I mean not literally a second after Shabbos, but let's say 10 minutes after Shabbos, much less time than it usually takes to warm up a whole bath, but this is a small bath, and this person has many servants, so therefore 10 minutes after Shabbos, it is possible that it was heated up Matzah Shabbos for you. It's a suffix. You don't know for sure that it was heated up for you Matzah Shabbos. Could be it was heated up on Shabbos itself. But Rav Yehuda is arguing on the Tanna Kama and says that even in the case of a suffix, you could be mekel and use it Matzah Shabbos. Okay, so Rav is paskening like the Tanna Kama, and the Gemara was bringing a raya for Rav's shitta from the Tanna Kama that in the case of a suffix you have to be machmer.
What's the significance of the Adam Chashuv?
In the case of Adam Chashuv, he has many avodim. And because he has many avodim, it's possible to be eaten up right away. A person that doesn't have many avodim, it's going to take a much longer time. So it says in the Mishnah that if you have a guy that was stam digging a aron or a kever, so then you could use it right away on for Yid Matzah Shabbos. Fragt the Gemara Amai, why should you be allowed to use it right away? So if you don't know for sure who you made the kever for, so you should have to wait at least b'chdei sheyasu. Why doesn't this go back into the discussion that we just had? Let's see if this is Rav Yisrael. Let's see. I mean, why are we saying bepashtus that you can use it immediately Matzah Shabbos? Omar Ula, so Ula says no. Our Mishnah is speaking about a case that it's clear that it wasn't done for a Yid. Ba'omed be'isratya. We're talking about a kever that was dug in a place that's right near a big Rishus Harabim, an open area. That's a place that's not usually made for a Yid, because Yidden do not bury a dead person in such a kind of a place. So therefore that's a siman that we know it was made for a goy, and therefore you can use it right away in Matzah Shabbos. So the Gemara Tainach kever, okay, this is an answer regarding the kever. You have a siman that it was made for a goy. Aron ma'ikalameima. How about the fact that it said in the Mishnah that if a goy makes an aron stam, I can say that it can be used Matzah Shabbos right away. Why? This is an aron that was made and was placed on the kever, and therefore we know that it was made also for this kever, which was made for a guy, and therefore a Yid is allowed to use it right away Matzah Shabbos.
Why should they bury the Yid over here?
Why should the Yid want to bury there?
Right.
He shouldn't, but he's allowed. If there's no choice, then he's allowed to use this kever.
So if you order flutes on Amazon are you allowed to use them?
Yes.
So
No. Not that we're ordering on Amazon. Yeah, it's not a problem. It's a whole separate discussion, but that's a different thing. It's not a problem. Sagt the Mishnah, Oisin kol tzarchei hameis. You're allowed to do everything that's necessary for a meis on Shabbos. Sachin umedichin oisai. You're allowed to anoint and wash the body on Shabbos, but ubulvad shelo yozis by aver. You're not allowed to move a limb. You're allowed to touch and do whatever is necessary, but not to actually move a limb. And this is because it's muktzah. The isser of muktzah is only moving, but not touching. Shaimtin esakar mitachtov. You're allowed to take out a pillow from under him. Umatila noisei alachayil. And you can go and place him down on sand. B'shvil sheyamtin. In order that his body should be in a place that's proper for him to be able to wait until they make the levaya. As Rashi explains, why you want the body to be in the coolest place possible. Kaishin is halechi, the jaw of the mace, you're allowed to tie it in order that it should remain in its position. Loisha yala, not to move it, because you're not allowed to move, to close the jaw, the mouth of the mace. Ela shlo yosef, that it shouldn't droop down, it shouldn't open up. Again, you're only allowed to do things that are keeping the evarim in place and not to move them. V'chein, a similar halacha, which is not about a mace, but a similar halacha, and this is something that was mentioned a long time ago in the Gemara, we learned about this. Kaira shenishbira, you have a beam that was broken in your house, from the sasoimchen oisa besafsol, you can lean a bench, or a pole from your bed, in order to lean it, that it shouldn't fall down. So you're allowed to use this to lean it on Shabbos. Lo shetala, you're not allowed to do this if something is already caving in, to move it, to be able to lift up the roof or whatever it is. Ela shalei taisif, you're allowed to lean it there, that it shouldn't cave in any further. We learned about this in the whole sugya of muktzah, and again to taking a klib, vatal klib mechani. There was a whole sugya about this where this concept was mentioned already before. Sagt the Gemara weiter.
The mouth is open out the closet.
Huh?
If the mouth of the glass is open, don't make shamachim.
Correct. Correct. You're not allowed to move and close it, but you can hold it in its place. Rav Shmuel, fragt the Gemara, Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Ma'aseh b'talmidei shel Rab Meir shenichnas achrav lebeis hamerchatz. There was a story, and we had this also before. Rab Meir, a student of Rab Meir, went together with him into the bathhouse on Shabbos. Bikish ladiach lekarka, he wanted to wash the floor for him. Amalei eimadich, Shabbos you don't wash the floor. Lasuch karka, he wanted to smear the floor for him with oil to make it nicer and cleaner. Amalei said, ein sachen karka, you're not allowed to do this in Shabbos. Now in a bathhouse, it's a stone floor, and there's no issue. Usually, what was the issue with doing any of these things on the floor on Shabbos? Hashvayas gumais, you're smoothing out and flattening out the floor. But in a bathhouse, there's no issue. But still, he said it's not allowed to do it, even though it's a stone floor. So the Gemara's question is, you see that you're not allowed to smear the floor, so you shouldn't be allowed to smear the mace either. So the Gemara says there's no comparison. Karka bekarka michlefe. The floor of the bathhouse could be easily exchanged with any other floor. So that, he said, is not allowed to be done. Mace bekarka le michlef. The body of a mace, to smear the body of a mace, that won't be exchanged with the ground in any other place, and therefore they allowed you to do to anoint the mace as long as you're not moving a limb. Going back to the Mishnah, what did it say? Kol tzarke mace. You can do everything that's necessary for a mace. Kol lasuya mai. The word kol, what is it adding? Lasuya the Tana Rabbanon, neviin kli maker kli matchis manichin al kreise. You're allowed to bring a cold vessel, or metal vessel, which is also cold, and you place it on the stomach of the mace, kedei shelo yehei tafuach, in order that the stomach should not swell. Upaikakin es nekavav, you're allowed to close off his nostrils, kedei shelo tikanes ben ruach, so air shouldn't enter into the body, which also causes swelling. Va'af shloima ame b'chachmasai, in Koheles, you see Shlomo HaMelech says a pasuk over there that speaks about what happens to a body of a mace that begins to decompose, and the different things that happens to the person. So over there, the Gemara here brings one part of the pasuk at a time, and it explains what each part of the pasuk means. In the simple pshat of the pasuk, it seems like it's talking about physical things, but really it's all a mashal for a mace. Actually, until the silver rope doesn't snap. What is this referring to? Zechut HaShedra. This refers to the chut HaShedra of the person that breaks after he dies. V'taretz gulas hazov, and then it says in the pasuk that the gulas hazov, a gold bowl, will smash. Ze amma. This refers to the aver of the bris that also gets disintegrated. V'tishaver kad ala mabua, and the jug will break on the fountain. Ze akeres. This refers to the person's stomach, which will swell and it could even burst. V'noretz hagalgal el haboir, and there's a wheel that is broken or shattered on top of the pit. Ze peresh. This is the waste of the person's body that comes out. V'cheinu oimer, that we see in another pasuk where it says v'zeirisi peresh al penechem peresh chagechem. The Eibusher says, I'll scatter your peresh, your waste on your face. Peresh chagechem, the waste of your celebrations. So we see that the word peresh means the waste of a person. Now the Gemara brought this pasuk. The Gemara brings another drasha. We're going to get to the pshat of this pasuk here. What is this pasuk referring to? The Peresh Chagechem, which celebrations? This refers to people that don't spend their time learning Torah. Instead, they spend all the days in their life of celebrating, of partying. And then the Eibusher says, all your indulgence in Olam Hazeh, I will spread all of your waste on top of you yourself. Amar Rab Levi, Amar Rab Papi, Amar Rab Yeshua, la'acha shloishi yomim. 3 days after a person dies, what happens to his body? Kreisa nifkas, the stomach, if it's not in the right place, so naturally what happens is the stomach will burst, v'nefeles lo al panov, and the waste of the person comes onto his face, v'oimeres lo, and the message, what it's telling the person is, toil mashanasatabi, take what you have given me. Meaning, if a person overly indulges in Olam Hazeh, in the chumriyas of Olam Hazeh, so then this comes on his face after he passes away. It's obviously not referring to the eating and drinking that a person eats and drinks to Shem Shemayim, but it refers to what a person eats and drinks and indulges in Olam Hazeh, so then this is what happens to the person after he passes away.
So this happens right away?
It says Shloisha Yomim over here.
No, that's the pasuk what Shlomo said.
No, also not necessarily right away. No. These things happen eventually. But the Gemara is bringing this here to explain why there's certain things that have to be done to preserve the body of the mace until the Levaya, and they're allowed to be done on Shabbos. As long as you're not moving a limb. because that's muktzah. But you're allowed to do anything without moving a limb.
But they moved David HaMelech, right?
That's a special heta. If you put a kikar or a tinnik on top of the mace, then you're allowed. Learned that before, yeah. Sagt the Mishnah, ein matzmenes ha-mace b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to close the eyes of the mace on Shabbos. V'loi b'choil im yitzias ha-nefesh. And even in the weekdays, if there's a geisis, if he still did not pass away, you shouldn't close his eyes because you're causing him to die before. V'hamatzim im yitzias ha-nefesh. If you close a person's eyes as he's passing away, it is a shofech damim. This itself is shofech damim, as Rashi says, you mekarev misasai, you bring about the moment of his passing away a moment earlier, so it's mamash shofech damim.
Should have feeling already touching you.
Correct. Because it's right. Gemara. Let's see. Exact Gemara. Tana Rabbana. We learned in Abraisa. Hamaatzmai mitzias and a person closed the eyes of a mace as he's dying. Areza shofech damim. It's mamish like he's spilling his blood. The example for this is a candle that's about to extinguish. You just put your finger there. You touch it a drop. Miyad kafsa. Immediately the fire goes out. Tanya, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says regarding Shabbos. So we just said on Shabbos you're not allowed to close the eyes of a mace after he passed away. So he says there's an eitzah for this. You want that the eyes of a mace should close without you physically closing it. You blow wine into the nostrils of the mace. You put some oil between his eyebrows. You hold on to the two thumbs of his feet. And his eyes will close on his own. Lav dafka, what it says here in the Gemara, is something that applies today, like many other of the things that the Gemara says regarding these things. Tanya Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Rab Shimon ben Gamliel said, Tinik, here the Gemara brings things benegeh to the moment of a person's life, how chashuv, how significant every moment of life is. Tinik ben yoymei chai, even a child that's 1 day old and he's alive, machal and all of us Shabbos. You're allowed to be machal Shabbos on him. David Melech Yisrael meis. David Melech Yisrael, and he passes away. Ein machal and all of us Shabbos. You're not allowed to be machal Shabbos for his sake. Tinik ben yoymei chai machal and all of us Shabbos. A child that's even 1 day old, you can be machal Shabbos for his sake. Amra Teire, the Teire says chal all of Shabbos achas kadesh yishme Shabbos as harba. You machal one Shabbos to save his life, and now he'll be able to be mekayim many Shabbos in his lifetime. David Melech Yisrael meis ein machal and olav. But once even an individual like David passes away, you can't be machal Shabbos for him. Kivin shemeis adam, because if a person when he passes away, batal min mitzvahs. At this point, you can't be mekayim mitzvahs anymore. V'hainu da'amar Rabbi Yechanan b'meisim chavshi, that once the person passes away, he's freed from the obligation of the mitzvahs. Kim shemeis adam nasa chavshi min mitzvahs, and therefore you can't be machal Shabbos for his sake. The heta, the basis of the pekuach nefashis is kedei sheyishmer Shabbos harbe, but not in a case where the person already passed away. The Tanya, we learned in another brayz, Rab Shimon ben Elazar Tineik ben yoymei chai. Another thing we see about how powerful a person when he's alive is, even a child that's 1 day old that's alive. Ein tzarich l'shomrim min achuldim min achbarim. You don't have to guard and protect him from weasels or mice. Aval oig melech habasham. An individual, a giant like Oig Melech HaBashan, mace, when he passes away, when he dies, you have to guard him from not being eaten up from weasels and mice. That the Eibusher throws your fear upon the animals. So the Gemara darshans from the word chitchem, calls man she'adam chai a masim metalas alabriyas. As long as a person is alive, chitchem also means chayis. When he's alive, then his fear is upon all other creatures. Kivim shemeis batlei masim. When he dies, so there's no fear upon any of the creatures. Rav Papa says, Nakitinon, we know, Arya beitrei loy nafel. A lion will not attack two individuals. He'll only attack one person that's alone. But two human beings he won't attack. Frek the Gemara hachazin on the nafel. We see that a lion will attack even two people that are together. And says the Gemara, that's in a different case. A chaya does not have any control over a human being. If the chaya senses that this person is like a behemoth, the chaya could see in this person, if his neshama, if the tzelem alakim in him is there, so then the chaya won't attack him. But otherwise it will. If a person is compared to a behemoth is nidbu, then nimshal. Then the animal, a lion and so on, will have a rulership over the person.
So the chad even with tzelem alakim?
If what? If what?
One person would Salam Alekim, then it will.
So that's the Chiddush over here and what Rav Papa is saying. Correct. The Mefarshim speak about that question. That from Rav Papa it's mashma that even a person that does have a Salam Alekim, a lion will attack even one person. Yeah, it's a shaila. Huh?
Daniel.
Obviously that was a miracle, correct, by Daniel and Goyvarayis that he was saved. Zok the Gemara, another thing we see about a person when he's alive, Omer Rab Chanina, Asar Lishem Bebayis Yechidi. A person should not sleep alone. Actually, this is Behemshach that we just said about a person alone, that he puts himself in danger to a lion. So Rab Chanina said that a person alone should not sleep in a house by himself. If he's sleeping alone in a house, so then Lilis, which is the mother of all Shadim, can come and grab him. So today, there's all kinds of atayim for this. If you have a candle burning, or some say even if you just have a mezuzah, your light, and so on, there's all kinds of atayim for this today, to be able to live alone in a house or an apartment. V'tanya Rab Shimon ben Elazar, Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, I say you should do mitzvahs achat hamaitza, as long as you have the means, or as long, let me do that again. I say achat hamaitza, you should do the mitzvah of tzedakah while you could find a poor person to give tzedakah to. Umatzi lach, and you have the means, you have the money to give, and v'oitcha b'yotcha, and your life is still in your hands. Chaparayin, to do a mitzvah as long as you can. Shlomo Melech says again, remember your Creator in the time of your youth, until the bad days will come. These are the days when a person becomes older and he doesn't have the ability, doesn't have the means to fulfill mitzvahs, as long as you can when you're young. And then the pasuk continues and says, the time period will come when you'll say that I have no desire to this time. What's this time period that only bem chayfetz elu yemayis hamashiach, that refers when Mashiach comes, shem bem leischus v'leichayva. Then there's no schus and there's no chayva, there's no yitzahara, so there's no schus and there's no chayva, there's no obligation to fulfill mitzvahs. This Gemara seems to follow the opinion that it says in the Gemara, mitzvahs betela is lasad lavai, that lasad lavai there'll be no mitzvahs, and it's only bem chayfetz. The whole avodah that exists bisman agolas won't exist then. More generally speaking, what it says there in the Gemara is the famous Hayem Yem, where it says that when Mashiach comes, the Golas tag, the Aveda and Golas, when you have to battle and fight and serve the Eibishter, and there's the Bechira of the person, there's a great value to that Aveda, that the Eibishter has a big shmak in the Aveda of a Yid, Lasad Lave, when there'll be no schus, no chayvet, no fight, so then ainly bem chayfet. So a person should chaparayin before Mashiach comes to do the Aveda that he has to.
Is the obligation. It could be like schus, the schar, there won't be any.
Correct, that's what Ashavir says, yeah. Davar liskas by shekulam ashirim. Everyone's going to be rich, and there'll be no ability to do mitzvahs, there'll be no, it's a time period that things are going to change. Upligi the Shmuel, so Shmuel argues on this, the Oma Shmuel, we had this before in the Gemara and Shabbos as well, Ein ben Eilam Azeli, Meisam Mashiach, El Shibud Malchi is Bilvad. The only difference between today and after Mashiach comes is whether we're going to be subjugated to the nations of the world. Shanema, because the pasuk says Ki lo yachtal avya mekarav haaretz, that even lasad lavai there will be avyanim and there will be the ability to be mekayim tzedakah, and the same with all other mitzvahs. So Shmuel argues on this. The Rambam paskins la'alacha according to Shmuel, Ein ben Eilam Azeli Maisa Mashiach. However, it says that that's only in the first kufa, but eventually in the later kufa, even according to Shmuel, it'll be mitzvahs betelis lasad lavai, and then the world is going to change and we won't be able to be mekayim mitzvahs. Tanya Rabbi Lazar Kappa Omer, La'olam Yevakesh Adam Rachmam al Midazu. A person should always daven extra for this. And what he's speaking about this is to have the money that he needs to be able to have parnasa and b'chlal to do the mitzvah of tzedakah, as we just said. Why? She'im hu loiba, if the being poor does not come to him, ba b'nai, it could come to his son. V'im b'nai loiba, if it doesn't come to his son, ba ben b'nai, it could come to your grandson. So ben b'nai b'ya shenema, because it says about this ki beglal adover hazeh, because of this. What's beglal adover hazeh? Tanud be Rabbi Shmuel galgal. The word beglal could also be read as a galgal. Galgal u'shachayze ba'olam. The being rich or being poor is like a galgal, like something that rolls in the world, that rolls from one person to another. Once a person is rich and once a person becomes poor, this is something that every human being is very susceptible to become poor. So therefore you have to daven extra for this. Rav Yosef said, Nakitinon, we know, Haitzor b'merabanon, a Talmud Chacham, lo imeani, does not become poor. Frek the Gemara, no, we see that they do become poor. And for the Gemara, the pshat is, im isa de meyani, even if he does become poor, ahaduri apischa loy mahader. It won't be necessary for him to go from door to door to collect money for himself. He's a Talmud Chacham, and he'll have people that will support him, and he'll be able to learn Torah without having to go and collect money personally. Right to the Gemara says, let the bisur. Abchia said to his wife, Ki asa anya, when a poor person comes to the door, agdimi le rifta, give him right away bread to eat. Why? Ki heichi deliktamu balabanecha, so that when your child will come to have to be collecting bread for himself, he'll also be fed. Omra lei, so his wife said to him, Meilet kalaitis luhu, you're cursing the children that they should have to go and collect bread. Amar lo, so he answered him, I'm not. This is a reality of the world. Kra koksiv. It says in the pasuk, beglal hadover azeh, v'tanu debeira bishmol galgalu shachayze ba'olam. This is a galgal that goes around in the world, and therefore it's bound to happen, and therefore you're going to feed others. In this chos, your child will also be fed. Tanya, we learned in the Brayse Rab Gamliel, Rebbe Yoime, v'nosan l'cha rachamim v'richamcha v'erbecha, the Eibusha should give you mercy and have mercy upon you. Kol ha'merachem ala briyos. If you show mercy on other people, merachemim olav v'nashamayim. The Eibusha will show mercy on you in the times when you are in need. V'chol she'ein merachem ala briyos. If you're not merachem on other people when you're in time of need, ein merachem olav v'nashamayim. The Eibusha will not show any rachmanis on you.